Hola! Welcome to another edition of the Rockwardness Podcast, where we interview musical artists about the very beginning of their journey, and they play us the earliest song they can remember. And then we talk about where they went from there. I'm your host, Rose Sean. Completing the trifecta are Terence LeClaire and Tony Tancredi. Today on the show, we're talking to Collin Desha, otherwise known as Low Hum. Quip magazine described his music as oceanic tranquil dream pop. I might also describe it as vibey psychedelic indie rock, or perhaps just hella dope. But I am just kidding, because no one should ever say hella dope ever. Anyway, he came out of the box hot with his single Comatose, blowing up on YouTube in 2019. He's released 3 albums and toured the US, Canada, and Europe with cool bands like Warpaint, Mating Ritual, Rah Rah Riot, Melts, and the Bluestones. We talk about growing up in Hawaii and how that continues to influence his work, the fertile indie music scene of Silver Lake circa 2010, and sadly, getting robbed on tour. We dug up a CD-ROM drive just to bring you exclusive digital access to a song from Collin's first band, Geronimo. And if you're a gear nerd, this is your episode. You do not want to miss this. Here's our hang with Low Hum.
I got you kind of blasting over here already. Sorry, I'm probably deaf.
No, you're good.
My shit is always so loud. Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, I think I'm good.
That's so dope.
Yeah, thanks. It's really cool. Like, I've really gotten used to playing it as like an instrument of the whole process. But
what's it called?
It's called the Echo Master by Death by Audio.
Okay.
So Death by Audio is typically known for their like amazing fuzzes and all that kind of like crazy, just like
as the name implies.
Yeah, like to the wall. I went to their shop in Brooklyn a few times and always was like fond of their pedals for guitars. And then I was like, wait, there's a vocal effect?
That's
Shout out.
Yeah.
And of course you would know about it because that pedal board is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Walk us through it a little bit.
Yeah, it's actually like my dumbed down version, because for touring I've kind of started to really implement Ableton into my process and stuff.
Yeah.
And kind of just using a lot of the records, I'm creating the sounds in Ableton. And so I kind of just sort of found myself spending a lot of money trying to recreate stuff that are pedal boards, right? So it's like I try to recreate like some crazy delay with modulation or fuzz that I made in Ableton, and I try to buy all these pedals. And so then I realized, well, maybe I should just use Ableton. So that's kind of like the newer thing that I've been doing now. But now I primarily have one pedal that kind of has been historically the low hum sound, so to speak, and it's made by a friend of mine at a company called Vaderin. He's based out of Philadelphia, and him and I kind of both, like, low hum sort of started at the same time. He was sort of becoming more experimental with pedals, and so he just kind of like threw a handful of pedals out to me to try, and one particular pedal, which I'm not even exactly sure at this point what it is, because we've done a few different modifications and he's like way more in the nerd zone than I am. But it's essentially like a germanium fuzz. And so we built one version of it, and then a second, and a third, and a fourth. And then I ended up going all the way back to V1, going back to like the basic components that were made in V1. So that has traditionally been like every fuzz sound you hear on any like low hum record, basically. It was like kind of, we made this sound and I was like, it's amazing. It's the germanium like fuzz, which is essentially in my ears is sort of like the tearing speaker tonality, where it's like got this kind of feeling of like an old blown out blues amp that just is like not working, and it sounds amazing, So that's like the root of the whole pedal board, basically. And then I'm using the Deco by Strymon, which kind of is like I kind of fluctuate between the different levels of saturation with that. It's kind of like my clean tone, so to speak. And then the new RE202, which is the Space Echo Boss. That's like this new version that they made, which I am still kind of just getting used to it, but I really like it. This Whammy, I think it's the V7. It's like the newest one. I can't remember which one it is.
Those things are so sweet.
Yeah, I just love the sound of them. I'm really into like the harmony with the octaves now. So like a lot of my riffs have now been like octaved. Yeah, if that's a word.
Yeah, it is now.
And then so like a lot of that, and kind of going back and forth between the high and the low and all that kind of stuff. And then it usually, it kind of gets complicated, but basically it's like fuzz, whammy, and then I split it with an ABY, and then one signal goes to the Ableton session, which is then in stereo, that kind of runs parallel. And then the second one, it's running parallel to the second source, which is going then to the RE202 to my 79 JMP. So in the mix, there's technically there's three signals, but basically it's all one guitar, but split up into all these different signals. And it's been really, really fun to mess around with. So that's kind of the new thing that I've been working with, and kind of feel like the edge sometimes, but
no, it's cool.
Isn't
man.
always the coolest.
What are the top two pedals, like the orange and
the top two are vocal effects. So I'm using an Eventide vocal effect processing thing that is ripped off from a Julian Casablanca pedal board that I found through Uniform Music, which is amazing. Shout out to those guys.
Shout out Uniform.
And then it's running through a Mudhoney T-Rex, which is just essentially distortion. And then there's two gain stages of it. So I can switch between sort of a basic saturation and then a really saturated saturation where it's... I like saturation if you're having all different levels of it all across the board. And then I have the Echo Master, which on my voice, which is the Death by Audio tape delay, which kind of has its own level of saturation as well, depending on how it's manipulated. And that's pretty much this version of what I'll be using for this whole record. I'm trying not to go any further. I kind of want to keep it
that's plenty.
Yeah,
it's pretty extensive.
Yeah,
thank you for walking us through that.
Yeah.
Collin,
Welcome, Collin.
He's here on
Welcome.
Rock. He brought his dope pedal board, and he's going to serenade us later.
Oh, I love it.
Or sometimes through the episode if you want.
Yeah,
I mean, if you want to just...
We'll just
it's
throw
ready
in
to go. You
some,
can just...
try some things here and there.
It sounds so good. I love your whole aesthetic, as you're talking about the pedals, just a broken blues amp, that doesn't quite work anymore, but has stories to tell. And it seems like a big sort of patina of the low hum sound. But in order to get there, we're going to start at the beginning.
Yes. So right. So this is your dialed in setup for now, but let's, go in the Wayback Machine to
totally
the very, very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised in Hawaii, and most of my life started with Hawaiian music, basically, which sounds nothing like my music. But that was really kind of the beginning of it. My family was, I'm really thankful that I was born to a really rich musical history. I'm 13th generation Hawaiians, and I've got, I'm related to a singer named Helen Desha Beamer, who was a really popular singer in I think the 30s and even from before that. But she was kind of a songwriter in Hawaii that was very prolific. And I'm one of the offshoots of that. So the Desha family is one side of it. And the other side of the family that came from her is the Beamer family. And they are Keolo and Kapono Beamer, who are very influential slack key guitar players in the Hawaiian culture. They wrote a bunch of songs that were really important to Hawaiian culture. And so most of my life was very isolated, and I didn't really get much influence from anything, because all I really was influenced by was, things that were on the island. And so a lot of times I would go to these events as a kid, and they were sort of up on the mountains in Kona, up in the hills, and we would do big music festivals out there, and it'd be all these traditional Hawaiian musicians. And that was really where music, I would say, that was kind of my influence, basically. And then I started getting really into surfing and kind of skateboarding. And at the time, it was all about skate videos and surf videos, on VHS, basically, And so that was really what introduced me to any music really outside of Hawaiian music and probably Michael Jackson. It was the two kind of big pillars of music for me. And that's when I started to get into punk rock music. That's when I started to introduce to Anti-Flag, and I saw NoFX. I met NoFX when I was a little kid, when I was making some early music, and just this whole kind of thing of this fuzz and this saturation and this attitude. And I don't know, I just always thought that was brilliant, and it's timeless. And so that kind of was what segued me into kind of where I am now, basically, and moving from playing. I mean, I grew up playing ukulele and playing in school and jamming ukulele in school with my friends, and all of a sudden being like, what is an electric guitar? Because I can play the ukulele. Like, I want to, how do I sound like that? Those bands.
How do I
and
plug
stuff.
that in?
Well, did you ever play like slack key guitar, kind of like
I like
Weston Borns and stuff? Or
You know, a little bit. Like open G tuning is basically slacky guitar, and I definitely, once I started to like, you know, delve into like the guitar playing, I started to like play it. But at the end of the day, like my heart really was not into that style of music, and it. You know, I kind of had a lifestyle where like I basically didn't really fit into like the sort of culture that I was born into, you know? And so I for sure had like some opposition to it when I was a kid. I mean, now that I'm like older, I can, you know, I look back and I laugh at myself like, you're an idiot. You should have learned like all that stuff. It's amazing now. But at the time it was more like, I was very anti the authority that
rebellion.
Like I was really inspired by these like this kind of anti, like it was like even watching the Vandals when I was a kid. They came from Warp Tour in Japan, and basically the only way you see music in Hawaii is if at the time was bands coming from Japan, which was primarily coming from the Warp Tour, and they were coming back to California, and they would always stop in Hawaii because the gear had to go through there. And they want to go to Hawaii because they're flying back. And so they would book shows there. And so that was really I'd say like the main driver of me being able to see music. And so the Vandals would play and I would watch them. And that's when I really started to be like, whoa, guitar playing can be, you know.
Anything.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want with it. And so, you know, that is what inspired me to make my first like punk band when I was about 13 called Geronimo.
Geronimo.
Oh,
Which is the CD that is.
Oh, you
sitting
brought
in
the
front of me.
CD.
Is that so? Was it part of
Look
that
at
community, like the surf community? Like it was also a punk rock community?
Yeah, well, it was like, you know, I never really heard this music until I started. So I grew up on Kauai for a while. I'm from the Big Island and Oahu, but I really spent a few years on Kauai for a while, and that was when surfing became really important to me. And that's when I found out about this surfer named Andy Irons. And Andy Irons, for like anybody who's into surfing, is kind of like this incredible story of this guy who basically was the only surfer that could really compete with Kelly Slater. Kelly Slater's like 10 world champions and just this like, you know, he's an insane sportsman that just, you know, he's so far off the scale of like what anybody can accomplish. And the only person that could really keep up was Andy Irons. And his surfing ability was so stylish, and it was kind of punk rock. And he would he had this surf video called Raw Irons, which was like, I like loved it, and I would watch it all the time. And there was like the Beastie Boys and Bad Religion and like all these bands on there, and I was like, what is this music? It is so cool. And so that was really what like kind of inspired me to start listening to that. There's a filmmaker named Taylor Steele who's kind of like to credit bringing all these bands onto, because he was the ones making a lot of these really awesome surf videos. And so that was really what brought me into that. There was a few other people in the scene as I started to grow and appreciate the music who helped kind of give me some other records. I remember I got like a River Phoenix record, which is Phoenix TX, and then I got what else, like a Saves a Day record, and you know, just a bunch of this kind of stuff. And that's really when I started to sort of blossom into like, I'm not going to play Hawaiian music anymore. I needed, what's distortion and what, you know, and loud drums, and so there's a small community, and that was really what kind of blossomed. There's a lot of funny stories about it and a lot of different things that we did playing in, you know, I used to play in, I was like 15 playing in a lot of places that I couldn't technically be in. So we'd play in gay clubs, we would play at churches, we would play anywhere that would allow bands to play. And
so cool.
That was kind of the Hawaii experience. It was very small. It was very like close, and coffee shops, literally like anywhere that would let us play. So
nice.
How old were you when this sort of punk awakening happened?
I was about 13, or 14. So I think I was like 8th grade or 9th grade. I think really when I started high school. I moved around a lot as a kid. I've changed like a school every year between like 2nd grade and high school. I kept changing schools for a lot of reasons. My dad was moving up in his job, and so I was kind of like just on my own a lot. And so the instrumentations and just being able to play music was a big part of my growing up, because I would just play. And so once I got kind of good at ukulele, I took a couple classes. You know, my grandfather on my mom's side, who lived in Oregon, sent me an acoustic guitar, and that kind of like opened up, you know. And then my other grandfather on my my mom or my father's side or my Hawaiian side bought me an electric guitar. Like, I don't know if you guys remember the Squire Strat pack that came out.
Oh my goodness!
Did you
Do we
just
ever?
break up the Squire starter pack?
That's like Rockward. That's a Rockwardness bingo item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like, it's like Sesame Street when they say the word of the day, and it's like,
Yeah.
we talk about the Squire starter
Amazing.
pack a lot. It's the best.
do.
You know.
Wow, I can't believe I nailed that. That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he bought me the Squire Strat pack from
Comes with the amp, comes
Musician
with like
Supply
everything.
or something like that.
Yeah.
American, I can't remember the name.
Those amps
A
could
musician's
crank,
friend,
you know?
yeah.
Like you could
Yeah,
like
yeah.
get some
Yeah.
so you could really drive that thing.
Yeah, and I would play that thing. I mean, I feel bad for my parents. My dad reminds me sometimes about how much you played in there, and so
Just on volume 10.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
like and that's probably right around the era that like TRL was a big part of my life too.
Oh yeah,
And I
shout out
just
Carson
thought-
Daly.
Yeah, and I would watch Blink and see Green Day, and then also seeing like the older grunge stuff of like Nirvana, like and all those kind of videos that were on there, and so that was kind of all happening. And then I kind of got disowned by my friends because I started to like spike my hair and do like all kinds of dumb shit. Which in hindsight was a little, I could see why they were like, what is going on with you? You know, but I was like so committed to the cause. And so, and then I started playing in clubs and going to bars, and they were all, being like, this dude's like playing in all these places that we can't go to. And so by the end of my high school, I kind of went full circle from not being liked to being like, oh, that's the kid who plays a lot of music all the time. So yeah, it was funny. And we did a bunch of stuff at school. And so I had like a pretty good music. Like Hawaii is a beautiful place to grow up because music is a really big part of the like the Hawaiian culture. And so like even in high school and stuff, like or like you look at like the Filipino culture that comes out of Hawaii, it's massively influenced by music. And there's a lot of karaoke components to it, but people sing at parties in their garages all across. Like my whole neighborhood would like have a karaoke party in the front yard. In Hawaii, we all hang out in the garage because it's like 90 degrees every day. You don't really stay inside. It's too hot. A lot of people didn't really have AC and all that stuff. So there's a lot of this kind of outdoor musical components. And so I would practice my punk band in the garage, and it was definitely kind of like, what is going on over there? But yeah, I mean, I loved it. And we did a lot, and I was a band called Geronimo, and the college stations would support it, and they would play me on the radio. And so like at about 15 or 16, I was like cooking in the music thing, and it felt really real. And we'd play in different school performances, and my father worked for Anheuser-Busch, which was a big component of like booking bars and music and supporting a lot of that stuff.
Nice.
So I was kind of getting a little bit of help from him to like
that's nice.
play at different places.
Oh, sweet.
I played on military bases. I played
cool.
at really heavy like military bars that that can be kind of uncomfortable for people to even just attend. But I just was so committed. I just wanted to play, and there wasn't a lot of places to play. So
who was in Geronimo, and you played guitar and sang?
yeah, so I played guitar, I sang, I quote unquote helped write these songs. My best friend at the time was a kid named Laith Caliph, and he was kind of an outcast in school too because he's half Palestinian, half Native American. And so in Hawaii, it was a very odd person to be in Hawaii because it's like nobody, there's not a lot of those types of ethnicities there. And so him and I were really kind of like the core of this project. And yeah, so him and I were committed to make music. We're still best friends to this day.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we have a great relationship. And then the third component was, of course, like the best drummer from the band, the marching band. It was our drummer, a guy named Corey Allen. And it didn't start that way. We had some other drummers who were not the best drummers, but eventually got to a point where we got him involved, and he was kind of your like the atypical like band guy. Like he was very good. So when the time comes to listen to this, you'll notice me and Laith, we're learning. Corey is very dialed. Everything else is kind of questionable, but Corey was not questionable. Even when we were like 15 or 16, he was like extremely talented, and like, so we kind of like lured him into the project, I guess you could say, and like got him on the records. And, that's like really when I first started getting into the studio world and kind of, quote unquote producing my own shit, but I didn't know what I was doing, but it was just making music and playing and stuff. But yeah, there's a small small studio out of Hawaii called Solutions Music that kind of gave us our first like session, which I'm pretty sure was where this was recorded at. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's
The
exactly
CD
where we
he's holding.
Yeah, the CD.
Yeah.
Who did the artwork?
I want to say that I did some of it.
Like on paint?
Yeah, like it must have been on like an old. I mean, this was the era of like I don't even know. I think I had to go send in somewhere to get this CD made. I don't even think it was the era of like
CD
burning.
baby.
It was
burning.
before
Yeah,
that,
I think it was right before that
Oh, wow.
because I mean I was a kid when I made this thing, so I think I had to go through like a local like facility in Hawaii
Yeah.
that like made CDs.
Wow.
Love it.
Well,
It's
yeah,
so rad.
because there's, I mean, the CD itself is printed on, right?
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
jacket. There's a CD printing. I mean, no, actually,
We'll put
I
pictures
wrote
in the show notes.
I wrote our name on there.
Nice. You were telling us something about the track listing earlier?
Yeah, so basically, like we were talking about earlier, this has an encore track, I guess you could say. When I sent in the music to get burned, I guess I must have sent them in something over the internet or over like a computer or whatever. But for some reason, the first song plays twice.
So you put the first song and the last song on the album is the same song?
Yeah,
No,
I
it's
think it's
like
literally like
in
the
a row.
first song
Oh.
twice.
So it's not a single, it's a double.
Yeah, it's a double.
A
yeah.
song so nice we played it twice.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, it was like a really formative time. I had met NoFX in the studio, and
yeah.
that was like a huge point of our life. They kind of came in during our sessions when we were like,
That's amazing.
Yeah,
wow.
You like
Fat Mike was like,
manifested that.
yeah, like it was kind of serendipitous. I mean, they were playing a festival in Hawaii, which the name is like not coming to me right now, and they were warming up, and we were essentially like either recording in the room next to it or rehearsing or something on that level, and we were just playing our songs, and then I just remember my drummer like going white. And we look behind, and Fat Mike basically just like enters the room, like mid song, and closes the door, and is just like jamming out with us, and then just kind of giving us like all this awesome encouragement.
Oh
and
my
then
gosh.
So
hung for
cool.
like a little bit, and then left, and then. The bathroom was connected. I'm like, this is all coming back. The bathroom was connected. So there's two rooms, and there's kind of a bathroom that connected it. There was like essentially two doors in each studio. And then I think El Jefe was using the bathroom and then came in through that entrance as well to watch. So yeah, we were
so cool.
we were super lit about it. It was like a big,
Yeah.
I think I was like 14 or something. So it was, I might have had like a NoFX Pump Up the Volume t-shirt on while we were playing. Like I was very,
That's good. They're like, this kid's cool.
yeah, I was
Validation.
very obsessed with them at the time.
That's amazing.
I guess you could say I still am.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Geronimo was kind of the beginning of it. And then basically like around about 15, I knew I was like not really going to stay in Hawaii. So I kind of had come up with this plan to get to California, to get to LA, to like kind of just continue my music. And that's basically what happened. I graduated at 18 and I moved like 2 months later. I think I graduated school in June and I was like in LA by November. Straight up just let's figure it out,
Dang.
So yeah.
And that's about the time I met you?
That is probably about 2 years before.
Oh, wow.
Not very long before.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, because that was not, because that Orange County music scene is kind of like, and just being able to get back down there with a lot of people that I met. Yeah, it must have been like maybe 3 years later or something like that. Yeah.
So sweet.
Super wild.
Before we get to OC,
Yeah, before California.
is there going to be a song from Geronimo you want us to hear?
Yeah, you want an intro one?
Like,
Yeah, I mean,
how about the one that's on twice?
I think that's the song. So on all truthfulness, I can't really remember exactly because it's on CD. It's been near impossible to listen to.
Yeah.
And I've tried
any
many times to
listeners,
actually get it on MP3, and like it's been crazy. It's like one computer had a CD-ROM drive, and I was like, yeah, and then that ROM drive broke,
yeah.
and then I had another option, and then that one broke, and so. But I'm pretty sure it's called A Little Something for Everyone, which is the first track, which I'm pretty sure is the one where our drummer is just slaying it and we are all struggling to keep it together.
I love
Sweet.
it.
So we'll spin that right now.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
My man.
Let's hear it again.
We can do that.
It's so good.
That's amazing.
Thank you guys. It's pretty fun. And
What's the story of that one? Do you remember?
I mean, a lot of this stuff was like, I was going through an era of definitely trying to sort of like find my way through the Hawaii music.
Yeah.
Whatever that.
Who am I?
Yeah, exactly. And so a lot of it had to do with basically, trying to sort of like have no excuses to keep doing what I was loving.
Yeah.
So the first and second track both kind of like fall into the same sort of theme. Some of the other songs I'm not so proud of to talk about.
Since we won't hear it, tell us a little story about the one you don't want us to hear.
Oh man, there's
away.
a song called the 50s song that I definitely, let's just say I was really into Blink-182 at the time, and I
we all
thought,
were.
I thought the sort of foul mouth lyrics were brilliant.
No.
And so, yeah, maybe
That stuff doesn't age well, huh?
it doesn't age very well, I must say. Maybe that's the song that cancels me someday.
Oh,
Oh, gotcha.
We'll hide it
Okay.
away. It's on a CD. Don't worry
Yeah,
about it.
that's why, but hey, maybe that's what's also brings me up to the front of the line. You know what I'm saying?
That totally was the era though of like, yeah, it was like really cool to kind of like push the envelope and say things that were
Totally.
like kind of wrong and
Yeah, I mean,
or vulgar
or
or
punk
like
rock, I mean,
well, that
like,
was I mean, that's kind of the thing that I've always kind of I always have a hard time with the cancel thing in general for me personally, because I feel like sometimes it's like, times change, things change, and people change, and ideas change. They're not stone. They change. We all have opinions that change, and definitely my opinions changed. So the 50th song is it's not like anything like too terrible, but it's nothing that I'm like trying to get behind.
But it's wild because I mean, like growing up now, everything's recorded, and like when you're growing up as a kid, you're kind of figuring things out,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of like,
no, I mean
But
truly
now it's like the internet's written in ink, like it's just.
I was just talking about this with some random person like 2 days ago about how glad I am that like social media didn't exist when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I'd be
Because I
busted.
mean, come on. Yeah, like
Yeah.
who
Because Rose wrote
were
like
idiots.
50 of those songs.
I did. Well, I actually, you know what? There might be something in the notebooks that would get me canceled. I don't know. But, no, but like even in my 20s, I like think about like certain attitudes I held privately, or like even things I might have said out loud that I'm like, oh my God, well,
like,
I'm glad I figured
why
that
did I do
out.
that?
Totally.
Yeah, and like don't have it like, I don't know, archived on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, making art in general, I sometimes feel that way, because even like
Yeah.
things I made 7 years ago, sometimes I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
Ideas that are in your mind and ideas and the way they come out, that to me as an artist, that's the gap you're always trying to close.
Yeah.
So
Well, and like, I don't know, I think especially like as a really young person, if you're trying to like be political or like say something edgy or something, like you might just sound really dumb, but also, you might be misguided.
Yeah. I mean, definitely misguided, and definitely when you're listening to Blink-182 and you're 15 years old, and there's songs that are just talking about things that you just you don't really know about. You're a kid, but I also would give them credit that they're kind of opening those ideas up, because I definitely feel like hiding them or keeping them stored away and not talking about them can almost like can kind of make it even more sort of toxic versus kind of
Absolutely.
joking about it and like putting it out there and being like, maybe I can talk about this thing, so.
It's
Well,
so
it was
true.
the Jackass era.
Yeah.
So that was very, but it all felt very transgressive. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you listened to Bloodhound Gang.
Oh yeah.
But that
Oh,
my
Bloodhound
God.
Gang,
That
yeah.
record, oh my God, the record with The Roof is on Fire. Me and my friend were obsessed with it. And
Yeah.
my parents
Horrified.
were hard to shock.
Is that
My-
do it like they do it on Discovery Channel?
That was
That's their
the
next
previous
album.
record.
Or next album.
My parents were hard to shock, and they hated it. They were like,
They were
"What is
shocked
this
by
garbage?" By the
seemed-
first Bloodhound Gang record, it's
Wasn't-
it's very vulgar.
I mean, it didn't age well, but like,
You don't play Bloodhound Gang for your parents.
right. No, totally.
Lesson learned.
But that's like, that's what's really interesting, and that's what the
Yeah.
internet's kind of done, where it's like now everyone has access to everything. When back in the day, like a comedian would just be doing comedy to their room, or like a punk rock band would be playing to a punk rock club.
Yeah, and I mean, art is supposed to be like a free expression. I just feel like at the end of the day, it's kind of like the same. I kind of have the same idea about like the ethos that comedians come in. It's like you kind of should be able to some degree. Obviously, there's always these lines, but like to some degree, like talk about things and laugh about things. You got to get a freedom of speech. It's like kind of what makes us Americans, and what's not to go like on the political side, but I just think that there's such a power to conversations and to be able to talk about it. And so, yeah, I don't love everything I wrote on this Geronimo CD, but like, I was 15 figuring it out, and I think it's how art is. It's what art is for.
Yeah.
And the biggest mystery is none of us will ever hear that song.
I'm so curious.
Yeah. Thank God.
For all we know, that song's like fine, and it's just like but it was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in also the kind of the grace of like putting out music mostly like, but before even MySpace, so it wasn't like everything you ever made was uploaded.
Yeah. I mean, today's art I find super fascinating because, like even talking about my own release that's happening like right now, it's like there's always this conversation of like more content, more music, release more music. And then I'm like still not 100% sold on it, because with the advent of the technology being the way it is and us having the ability to make art as easy as possible, like I remember this conversation, and I'm trying to remember exactly who I heard it from, but it was basically this idea that like, part of the reason why the Beatles or like these early Nirvana records and they're so amazing was because they didn't have the ability to record themselves. And so they had to practice and write for hours and hours and hours and hours and days and days and days on end. And then you show up to the studio and it's like,
you nail it.
There's the work, you can hear it on those first albums. But today we don't really enforce that. We want people to make records, or I don't even know if we want them to, but people are making them, from my perspective, sometimes prematurely. Like you haven't flushed out the situation. You don't know what kind of artist you are. You don't know what you're trying to say, but you can make it sound pretty good. You know what I mean? You can produce a record with Ableton. You can make good beats. You can have good microphones. Technology's cheap. And it just creates an interesting situation, I think. It's just because you're getting a lot more music now and a lot of it happening all the time. And there's a lot of people who are making it. And I'm not really trying to say that it's not a good thing that people are making art, but I think it's changed the whole way that we're digesting it and how it's being made. And I like to take my time. I've kind of come up with my own sort of process that I like sort of take with how I make art and being able to, write stuff. And then I kind of start to play the things that I wrote, and then I play shows, and then I try to travel and play them as much as I can. And then I kind of come full circle around to where I'm like, all right, now I want to write again. I'm not really a huge fan of like writing all the time. I don't really understand how, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm not really that kind of artist. I prefer to take my time, and I like to live life and marinate on like life and have experiences and stuff, because that's what dictates what I'm going to make. And so the writing all the time thing, it just, I don't know.
Well, speaking of living life and experiencing all of it, you end up in the OC.
Yeah.
Yes. But it all comes back to Orange County.
Yeah.
So it's pretty straightforward. So I'm living in Hawaii, and it's a difficult thing financially to travel when you live in Hawaii. A lot of people who live there don't get a chance to leave. It's very expensive to live in Hawaii, and it's 3,000 miles away from anything. And so my whole like young growing up, I didn't really have. So we refer to like us Hawaiians, we refer to the rest of the United States as the mainland. To travel in the mainland, like when you're in the mainland, you live in the mainland, a lot of people don't really realize, and they take it for granted, that you can get in your car and you can drive places. You can go and drive up north. You can drive to the beach. You can drive, to Phoenix, Vegas, wherever you want. And so in Hawaii, we don't really have that luxury. And so for me, I had like never really left Hawaii growing up. I had been to Canada once. I had done 2 trips to Disneyland, and what was next to Disneyland? Huntington Beach, and I was a surf kid, so I wanted to go to the Surf City, USA.
That's right.
So for me, the only way that I had any real perception of being able to get from Hawaii away was to move to Orange County and move to Huntington Beach, which was the only thing I really knew of the mainland, outside of a couple of like family trips to Portland, and in Canada, like I mentioned. So that's basically what drove me there. There was really no other reason. I just had gone there and I had some familiarity with it, and I like got an apartment. This was before like really you would do the Craigslist thing, and I'd never seen the apartment. I got this apartment and I moved out here, and I like just showed up, and luckily the lady that was like the manager there was super sweet to me, and my mom was a big part of this process too. She helped me like move out here. And I basically just like set up shop in Orange County and got a space in Huntington Beach, and I got a job and with like the most cliche fucking thing you could think of, but I worked at Duke's in Hawaii, or in Huntington Beach, because of course there's one in Hawaii. I'm a good candidate to work there. And so I got a gig there and started meeting people, and just I used to play music in Duke's with some friends, and I just took pretty much every opportunity to just like kind of get my foundation going in it. And I was doing all types of dumb shit down there and just trying to figure it out.
Sorry, real quick. I'm not sure what Duke's is.
Duke's is a restaurant. It's like a restaurant so Duka Hanamoku is a very famous like Hawaii.
I've been to the one in Honolulu.
Yeah.
There's also one in Malibu and stuff. Yeah.
I've been. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like the surf Hawaii restaurant.
But sort of like if Applebee's was surf themed kind of vibe.
Yeah, the difference about it that's kind of important for like Hawaiian is Hawaiians is because of Duka Hanamoku.
Right.
And it's kind of like being sort of, he's probably one of a handful of very prominent Hawaiians that have like this sort of world recognition.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of representation for Hawaii, like in general. We kind of are like the mainland, or we're kind of like the tourist capital for everybody out there in the world, but the actual Hawaiian culture, like the representation is very minimal, I think.
Yeah.
And a lot of people claim to be from Hawaii, but they're not actually Hawaiian. Duka Hanamoku is maybe one of the only ones that really like represents actual Hawaiian who has like made this thing. So there's a big importance in Hawaii with that kind of aspect. So that's why it's like, oh yeah, I worked at Duke's.
That's cool.
That's funny.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Was it just you or the Geronimo team? Like,
no, it was just me. Yeah.
So what happened to those guys?
They are all
Geronimo split.
Yeah, they dispersed. My buddy Laith is currently working to be a lawyer, and he lives in Virginia. And Corey still lives in Hawaii, and I'm pretty sure last I talked to him, he was still doing music and working in band and like help teaching and stuff like that.
Nice.
So, yeah, super cool.
So you wanted to kind of do your own solo stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I had the capacity to think that big. I mean, moving from Hawaii to Oahu, or excuse me, to the mainland was like such a cultural shock for me, and such a like. I think I was just trying to figure it out most of it.
Yeah.
But I knew that like whatever I wanted to do in my life, I knew I had to sort of like, it wasn't going to happen in Hawaii. And I'm super in love with Hawaii, and I write tons of songs about it. And my whole record is basically kind of about, my newest record's kind of about this term Terra Incognita. It's not kind of, it's called Terra Incognita. And so, which is essentially like when you look at a map, it's like the black part has been unexplored. And so, that was my whole philosophy. It's been my philosophy for life for a long time, is I'd love to go where I haven't been, and just kind of keep pushing where I haven't been, to continue to keep exploring those like unknown places. So it was the beginning of kind of making this big jump, and I had no fucking idea what I was doing, and I had no friends to help me do it. So I just did what I knew to do, and was like, I know that place, and that's one step closer to what I'm not doing, or one step further. So.
Big balls.
And then you made friends like Tony.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a funny story. I basically ran out of money. I like got really poor, and I couldn't go to. I was trying to go to college, and I was just too much to work and go to school and kind of go through this big cultural thing. And I had a friend who got me a gig at a marijuana dispensary, and then I made some money, and then I got enough of a foundation that I bought a shit ton of recording gear. And I
Nice.
bought like the Digi 002. I bought
Yep.
Pro Tools. I brought essentially how to record music for dummies at Borders or whatever. I went like down that road.
Smart.
Kind of learned that thing. And then I had a family friend. So there was a radio promotion guy who I have a lot of respect for and a lot to credit him. He basically would fly to Hawaii to promote bands on RCA Records. And he was a radio promoter. His name was Artie, and he knew my mom through my mom working at these hotels. When I got to LA, or I got to California, I basically was like, hey, I'm here and I don't know what I'm doing. And he was like,
Hello.
you should come do an internship at Universal Records. And
Nice.
so I was like, done deal. So I packed up my shit and I moved to LA. I moved into a studio apartment with Lath. In Koreatown, and I got a gig at Universal Records, and that was really what then sprouted like a lot of things. I got hired there. I worked in the mailroom. I joined this band called Vanaprasta, which is
shout out Vanaprasta.
Yeah,
Steve.
exactly. And I basically got really lucky to meet a guy named Vincent Herbert, and he had just signed Lady Gaga. And so that sort of spearheaded me into this whole side of my life that became Universal Records, and I worked as an A&R coordinator, and I helped make records and I have A&R credits on a couple Gaga records, and that was really kind of like the business side of my life while
so rad.
simultaneously playing in Vanaprasta.
Yeah.
And that's how that all kind of came together.
That's so cool. That just started with like that one reaching out, ask,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Was
just
the Tony
ask.
quote?
Just ask.
ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Always.
the current drummer in my band. I got to give a shout out to Spencer Lear. He has a
Spencer.
very famous line that we use all the time. Closed mouth, don't get fed. So,
Yeah. Oh
that's
my
good.
God.
yeah,
It's true.
Yes.
He likes to remind us all the time about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's really when this scene kind of popped in, and I think we recorded at your house, right, in Orange
Tony's
County.
house?
You did.
Yeah.
I used to have that.
Was that a tonality
Tonality
session?
magazine.
That's
session.
right.
Tonality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Which
man,
was a long time ago now.
that was 2010.
10?
That was 14 years ago.
Jeez
You
Louise.
gotta put tonality in the show notes.
Yeah.
I mean, all
Put
the videos are
episode,
still on
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
All the videos are still on there. It's just really bad. I literally didn't know what I was doing at all.
I mean,
Everyone
No.
starts somewhere, Tony.
That's
I know,
right,
right?
Tony.
We had a
Everyone
couple.
starts
Yeah.
somewhere.
Conan O'Brien was talking about these little flip cameras, so we bought like 3 of them. We were using those, and it was just like it was garbage. I think the audio was good though.
Oh,
Yeah.
I remember
Remember
those
those
cameras.
flip cameras? They were called flip, but they didn't flip.
No, they didn't
It was
flip it
so
off.
confusing.
Yeah, I know.
No, but remember
I might
they were
have one
like
of those
this
still.
big, and it's like what everybody had at shows before
Yeah.
smartphones.
Yeah.
before phones. Yeah.
So talk about Vanaprasta a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Vanaprasta was a really big, important part of my life for sure. We basically were a bunch of, me times 4, I guess, or whatever.
yeah.
There was like each one of us were kind of just cut from the same cloth where we just kind of don't know what the fuck we're doing. We just wanted to come play music. Nobody taught us what we were doing. Nobody
Yeah.
gave us any shortcuts. We didn't come from any cool family members. Like we just were like straight up music fanatics who just wanted to play music. And how did that happen? So I was working at a restaurant in Beverly Hills while I was interning at Universal Records, and I worked at this like Japanese food restaurant or sushi restaurant, and I met this kid Steven Wilkin. Shout out to Steve.
Yeah, shout out Steve.
And we were on the same. We had this mutual friend at work. He's like, you got to meet this dude. He's got a great voice. And I had, at this point, I was just a yes man. So
Yeah.
I roll over to Silver Lake. He's living in an apartment with this kid named Taylor Brown. Shout out to Taylor Brown.
You sure?
And Taylor and him were living in this apartment together in Silver Lake. And I just rolled up. We started playing. We started jamming some songs. Everything's kind of going good. This is a really beautiful melting pot of musicians at the time in my community. One of my best friends to this day is a guy named Andres Villalobos. Shout out to Andy.
Yeah.
He's in a band
out.
called James Super Cave,
Oh, yeah.
and so he would roll with me over to to this apartment complex, and directly underneath it was my friend Cameron Demetric, who was in Vanaprasta. Shout out to Cam.
Yep.
And then this guy named Chad Carlisle, who is another like sound engineer dude who's done a bunch of stuff around the town and has his own world as well, his own bands. And directly next to him was a kid named Joaquin, who was the singer of Super Cave.
Yeah.
And so we were just kind of like in this big melting pot. And
Wow.
And then the last component was Ben Smiley, R.I.P. was like really, really, really good drummer. And he went to school with Cameron at Full Sail out in I believe it was in Arizona. They were like in a recording school together. And so we were all kind of like just rejects trying to play music together. And all of us stylistically were pretty much on different pages, which was sort of Vana Process charm, you know, it was like this very big melting pot. And
oh yeah, those shows were fun.
Yeah,
it
was
really good.
We just played, you know, we loved playing, and like we didn't really know what the fuck we were doing, but we just loved playing, and we were loud, and more importantly, Steve was able to sing over us. Like we were.
His voice, he had a range.
He had a range. He was the only person to this day that I could walk into a room and it was like amplifiers turned to like 10 and bass amps that are like, you know, full stack. And he comes in with a microphone and he can over sing all of us, you know. It's the projection and just his ability. So that was really what kind of got me into the music scene, and we started doing the Spaceland residencies and going to Austin and playing South by, playing CMJ. We did a bunch of tours with some Texas bands, and that was kind of the whole thing, and that was like basically was happening while I was simultaneously working at Universal Records, and so I was doing a lot of stuff with doing a lot of like A&R stuff with Gaga. We were producing Born This Way record, and I was doing like I would go on tour and then play shows at night and fucking have to be up at like 5 a.m. to do conference calls, and I was just kind of going full speed dead ahead. I was trying to absorb everything I could, and my mentor Vincent Herbert was teaching me everything on the business side, so I was implementing that on the Vana Process side and just trying to build shit and make records and kind of use all of this information, and that lasted for about like 8 years or so. And then that kind of the classic thing, we sort of lives change and people change, and then I went on tour with Super Cave. I basically jumped in the James Super Cave band, and then we went on tour. I was a bass player for them for a while. We toured with Wild Bell, and we played with we had so many fun shows with that band. And while I was on the road with them, I was more of a bass player and functioning as just like a player in the project. And we did like a big US run, and we did a bunch of stuff, a bunch of festivals, and while this was happening, I started to make Low Hum basically, and I just kind of was like feeling like I needed to go back to Geronimo basically. And I was kind of craving like more control, more. Yeah. I just sort of had like something to say. I wanted to write my own records, and I wanted to make my own records. And at this point, I had produced 15 records or something, 20 records of my own, and I was just making so much shit, and I just kind of wanted to do my own thing and kind of implement all this and bring the singing back and kind of just get all of these things kind of back. And that's basically kind of what happened. I started making music in the van in Ableton. We would drive long hours and I would just be making shit in the back of the van. That's how the song Nebraska came up, because I was in Nebraska, which I've never actually been in Nebraska except for in the van driving on the freeway. But I named the session like Nebraska. Yeah, sorry, Nebraska. And I named the song Nebraska because my phone was like, oh, I'm in Nebraska, and this is cool. And so then I made that and had other song called Comatose, and basically these songs were a part of my first album. And then YouTube just like showed me some love, and I started getting millions of streams, and that's basically when things kind of were like, you know what, this is like, it's time for me to just do this. And that's sort of a quick way of explaining it's sort of what happened.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like
Comatose has, I think, like 14 million.
Yeah.
Actually, it's at 27 now.
Yeah. On Spotify, though.
Oh, yeah. On YouTube, it's at 27 million.
Good Lord.
Oh, man.
It's like an international thing. I'm so humbled by the whole. It's not even my song anymore. It's like everybody else's.
Would you say you're low humbled?
I'm very low humbled. Maybe high humbled.
High humbled.
I met you in 2019.
Yeah, where we played the Desert Festival.
Yes, at Moonrise,
that show was awesome.
That was so fun.
Yeah, it was that show was amazing, because just to like give you guys a bit of like a backdrop, it was like, come play this festival, you're outside, you can turn up to 10, and then like I'm looking up at the mountains and the desert, and like you're just like, I can hear it literally echoing off the desert mountains, and like I can be as loud as I want, and it was slightly windy, so there was just kind of this like,
dude, you guys looked
it was like
so
Floyd,
cool.
you know, it was like a very Floydian kind of grandioseness to it. And
what was the lineup for that?
That at the time was a 4-piece, and we had, I believe it was me. I think my buddy Jules was playing drums. Shout out to
definitely
Jules.
Jules. That's when I met Jules as well.
Yeah, okay. And then Kevin was playing, who plays with me now, and shout out to Kevin. And then and then Taylor Brown. I think Taylor was there. Yeah,
Yes.
I believe my buddy Taylor was there because we were a 4-piece. He had to be there. Yeah. So it was, it was very raw, which I was really pumped about, and it was just fucking loud. And like when you're outdoors and it's loud, it's like, I don't know, there's just something special about it.
You can feel it.
Love it.
Yeah.
So loud you can feel it. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, there was that big rock formation that was kind of behind the stage, which looked really cool at night. But so I went up there to like watch the sunset, and I'm just chatting with these dudes, watching the sunset
on the rock
over the beautiful desert. It was gorgeous. And then the sun starts to get low, and they're like, "Well, we got to go set up." And I was like, "Oh, sick! You guys are playing, great." So I don't know. A half an hour later, my friends Amanda Dupre and Brittany Adams are
Shout out.
we're like. Somebody laid out a blanket for us, and we were just like laying on our stomachs with like our hands under our chins, just like right in the front watching you guys play. We're like, this is amazing. And yeah, the lights were cool. Matt Shores, good job.
Yeah, that's right.
Shout out Matt.
Little shout out to Matt Faulkner and Eric Brown for putting on that show as well. But
On the production side for sure.
But yeah, that is the largest festival I ever want to go to. And it was so dope.
That was a really fun time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really, 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 really loved that experience. It was super fun. I mean, that was talking about like the sound, for sure that was very informative even for me, because it was just like when you have certain songs that resonate a certain way, it's just really fun. It's like you just kind of keep the feedback loop going,
Yeah,
which is cool.
that was sick. So then did the full record come out that year?
I can't exactly remember. So it was essentially like an EP that I made that had Nebraska and Comatose on it, and then I put the EP out, and then then I think Nebraska got picked up on a YouTube playlists and started getting like millions of streams, and then I got a hit up by a record label who I'm still with today called Last Gang Records. Shout out to Last Gang.
Yeah.
They've been a huge proponent of my art, and I'm tremendously blessed to have supporters of my art, period. But they hit me up, and basically they gave me a record deal, and then they wanted me to do another album or a full-length album, which I went back with Jules, and then we completed that record. And then I think it was like somewhere in between that process is when it was. So once the full-length album came out, Comatose just started to just skyrocket, basically. I just started seeing millions of streams, and it became like an international thing where we were getting hit up by people from all over the world. And it was like a really informative time for me with like the power of music and just kind of solidifying why I even do any of this stuff. And I was getting these, there's like thousands and thousands of comments, and I scanned through the comments one day, and it's like war vets talking about the song.
Wow.
Like people with depression talking about the song. People who fall in love talking about the song, who have like met each other and over this song. And so the song kind of becomes like, even to this day, I would say like the song is bigger than Low Hum, basically. It's like I've done a tour with Warpaint. We played all of like a lot of Europe, and we were like in Poland, and people are rolling up and they're like, I didn't know you were playing, but I listen to your song every day. It's this sort of like thing where it's bigger than the project, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
And sometimes I'm like, damn it. but in all honesty, I'm super humbled by it. And it's a piece of art that I'm very proud of. And I'm like, you as an artist, it's like, why do we do this, right? It's is it just to feed our egos, right? And for me, it's not. It's really about that. It's when I get to see some good that's come from the art.
Yeah, people connecting with it.
Yeah, like seeing people have better lives because of the art. Because that's what art was for me when I was a kid,
Yeah.
Going back to the Geronimo days.
Yeah.
I know, full circle.
Yeah.
So then, did you co-write the second record with anybody, or
so
was
the
that...
second record was called Nonfiction, and I basically had kind of come up with this idea that the first record, it was Jules and I. It's like the writing for Low Hum has always been like one of those like things that I talked about earlier about like the ethos around the project. Like I wanted Low Hum to be able to be a thing where I could do whatever the fuck I wanted to do. So if Tony, you and I want to write a song, we
Yeah,
can fucking write a
that's a
song.
love
Like
song,
if
yeah.
I want to write a song by myself, then I can write a song by myself. Like there's
Yeah.
really no rules.
I love that.
So the writing itself is kind of structured that way, but the production side of it is not structured that way. And the second album I made with a guy named John Joseph out of and John is
Yeah, he played bass for Borns.
exactly and
Shout
John
out
is
John, love that dude.
dude, he's a fucking beast.
No, he's amazing, bro.
He's
He
really
was on the
great
road,
player.
just always editing, doing stuff like that, man.
Yeah,
Just so talented.
He's super talented
Yeah.
dude, and had a really cool studio in North Hollywood. And I just kind of got hooked up. I actually had like heard his production through some online stuff, and was just like, "What the fuck? Who is this?" I'm a big lover of drum sounds, and I'm just like, "What the hell are these drum sounds? This guy's insane." So I just hit him up, and he was super pumped, and we made that record at the beginning of the pandemic. And so for me, that record, I kind of feel like is unfortunately has been, a few of the songs have done really well, but it's kind of been a pandemic baby, you know, like for like a lot of records that came out in that time, it was a very confusing time. We didn't know how to market the record. I didn't know, we couldn't go on tour. We put one song out, and then it was like almost a year later when the record came out, and it was obviously people had a lot of shit to deal with in their lives. And so like, I kind of feel like that record is sort of my, like, I'm really proud of it, but I really wish it had gotten more of a proper, like
a fair chance.
Yeah. It was just very confusing times. And then that was the second album. And so the third record, I kind of just wanted to do it all myself. And I did co-writes with members in the band. I did co-writes with other friends of mine that aren't in the band. And basically just kind of did this. It's kind of a funny story. Like we kind of started getting some touring opportunities, and I did like a US tour, and I did like a tour in all of Europe. I was with Warpaint. It was like a huge monumental thing for me. I'm so humbled by those girls, and they're so badass. And
so
they're
cool.
amazing. An honor to be able to be part of that. And like they're very popular in Europe, which I kind of maybe like didn't realize how popular they were. I mean, I knew the venues we were playing, but like when I got there, I was like, holy shit, this is like amazing. This opportunity is amazing. And so I started feeling really inspired. I started making all this shit in Europe, in Ableton, like I do, like, you know, just kind of making stuff. And then we get back, you know, it was a hugely changing thing for me, being from Hawaii, being in Europe, I've never been to Europe. I had never been to Poland. I'd never been to all these places, you know. We went to Ireland, Scotland, and the Netherlands and France and all these places. So for me, it was hugely this growth period. I get back, and then I get on tour, and then we get robbed, and they steal my record. Yes. Which was, in all transparency, was a baby record. It was mostly these ideas that I had kind of got influenced by in Europe.
But
yeah, that shit got swiped in Portland. And no, I didn't back it up like a genius, because it was like I was just basically going back to back. It was like we came back from Europe, and like 2 weeks later I was on tour, and I was trying to, like, you know, just juggle everything that I was trying to do. But as sometimes bad things become good things, I basically got back home. This tour that I was on was dead. I got robbed, and then I got home and I got COVID. So like it was like not happening. Like even if I didn't get robbed, I would have had COVID. Like
they took all your gear too, and all.
Luckily, they only stole like backpacks, which did have like all my money, all my computers.
That really is
IDs.
like the important.
It's kind of the most important. You can get gear. I can salvage gear. I can't salvage like a credit card to get a hotel room, or like, you know, to keep the ball rolling. They stole all of our merch money. They stole. They took everything. Like all this music that I had. I had also built a really comprehensive. I use Ableton Live, so like I can't just like. I mean, we can play the songs for sure, but not on the level that I want to. And so they stole that. So it was like I couldn't really just like. It was just like kind of the end of this tour, which. All of this kind of, and then I got home and I got COVID, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? And so I was like, I need to take a break and take a breather. And so, well, I didn't actually. I did another tour after that of Canada, which was an amazing tour with this band called the Blue Stones.
Oh, okay.
I just rebuilt everything, basically.
Wow, that's amazing.
But I did this tour with the Blue Stones, and that was another beautiful experience to go all through Canada. We played, I think, like 13 shows, Saskatoon, and all these beautiful places deep in Canada that I had no idea about. You know, it was really, really. I mean, Canadians are awesome, and music in Canada is awesome. Like, it's a very like it's a. I had definitely not really understand the grasp of that whole that world. So I get back and I'm like, I need a little breather. So I take a breather, and then I kind of realized like, no, I don't need a breather. I'm ready to go. And I was very motivated because now I had like, I felt like I was starting from scratch. You know, I kind of had
Well,
like,
you were.
I literally was like, fuck, you know. And so I just started cranking out songs after songs after songs. And while we were in Europe, Stella, the drummer, was like, I got the studio out in the desert. If you ever want to go out there and like do a session out there or something, like just let me know. And so I ended up just kind of like drinking a lot of Celsius, smoking a lot of weed, and I wrote like 40 songs or something. Yeah,
Only
Shout out
40?
Celsius.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. We just got to shout out Alice Gray real quick.
Yeah,
We had
Celsius.
a very, very long conversation about Celsius.
That's
in
a
our
whole nother
episode.
podcast.
Yeah.
I should like get a sponsorship. I drink way too many of those things.
That's the good stuff.
I love them. But
Yeah.
so, I mean, they weren't full songs, you know, they were like ideas of songs and so forth. Just these like kind of, but they were songs, you know, like I had like a blueprint of how to finish them. So I go out to the desert, you know, I use Stella's studio. I kind of bring my gear and I build it out for 2 weeks, and then I stay there for 2 weeks. And then I made this record, and this record is like my favorite one by far. And I'm really
Nice.
proud of it. And it's been getting well received. So we're dropping some new stuff. I guess by the time this comes out, I think the record might be out already. But
Yeah, May.
yeah,
May.
it'll be in May. So it should be close to out, if not already out. But yeah, and so it's just been great. We shot this music video in Hawaii where we went to. There's a song that I have called "Only If You Say So," which is just like kind of like this song about me wanting to go back to Hawaii and but only if, you know, she says so, basically. And so I
If who
went out
says
there.
so?
Yeah.
Hawaii or your wife?
Yeah, well, they're kind
Hawaii.
of the same thing sometimes. Yeah. But no, we shot this video out there and it was awesome. We went into Kilauea Crater and we went to the Black Sand Beach on the Big Island and Kaihana Point. And I just try to really show a side of Hawaii that isn't sort of the typical, you know, palm trees and this sort of like tourists attractions you might see or something. I wanted to show like the surreal kind of vividness of how rich the place is. And so we kind of made this like off-world video of Hawaii to showcase it. So yeah,
That's
I'm really
so
proud of it.
cool.
I got to see it on the big screen and it was awesome.
Yeah,
And actually, I thought of you, Terence, because so in the video, Collin's wearing this like hooded black jacket, and you know he's got this kind of bushy dark hair. And I swear to God, the guy that was delivering all the food at this place where they were screening the video. From the back, looked just like Collin in the video because he had this like, you know, kind of like fluffy dark hair and was wearing this
Immersive.
black hooded
So
jacket.
immersive.
And I was
Mascot.
like, I was like, did they hire the student? Like, he's just, you know, there's like a Collin double just like walking through the crowd.
That would be so
around.
dope.
That's
That
awesome.
was
be
actually a
pretty
really cool idea.
Yeah, that would be actually fun.
But yeah, so yeah, what do you want to play us?
Yeah, this song is called Hints. It's like the 5th song on the record, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Me and Jules wrote this up in Crestline. It was kind of like it was an impromptu track. We just kind of started. We were like kind of more in this like writing, maybe like we were less writing and kind of more like starting to mix. But it was like raining a bunch, and we just kind of started messing around with these keyboards, and we wrote this song. So this version will be kind of like the stripped down electric version of it versus like kind of the more like electronic one that's on the record. Working jagged lines, trusting in the time, like the morning sun, and you shine out today, weaving memories and places in my mind, reflecting who I am, hints of what was mine.
out of time, and like the rising tide, and shifting family ties, and stalking remedies, and pushing through the grind, respecting who I am, and hints of what was mine. When did it all become so crystal clear? I sense that all I need is here. When did it all become so crystal clear? And I sense that all I need is here. When did it all become so crystal clear? And I sense that all I need is
Nice.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. And then, do you want to play us out?
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
I'm definitely bending this thing out too.
I
Yeah.
love that guitar line though.
It's nice. It's
Oh,
really
yeah.
fun, man. It's like it's funny. It's not even on the record. I'm like every time I play it, I'm like, should have probably recorded it. But that's how it goes.
But that's
Bring in all the other pedals for like playing us out
here?
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna get probably a little nastier.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love that stripped down version of Hints. That's off the new record, Terra Incognita, which came out May 24th. You can order it on vinyl right now in his merch store along with his other records. Highly recommend you do that. You can, of course, stream it as well. We'll put those links in the show notes. Follow Low Hum on social media to stay on top of all upcoming tour dates and releases. Maybe one day he'll release the mystery song from the Geronimo album. One can dream. We would be so stoked if you subscribe to our podcast, and if you like it, please rate and review. This is the currency of podcasting, and that would mean a lot to us. So please follow us on social media. We're on all the things. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening. We love you. Bye-bye.